Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today our special guest is Shawn Nichols. And this is going to be a really interesting episode because Shawn Nichols doesn't have the usual background story of a martial artist. He didn't train for many, many years as a kid and go directly into student leadership and eventually to teaching. He actually was a U.S. Marine and served for 5 years for the Marines. And he's going to talk about how he got involved in karate. And I think the really cool part you're going to hear is like for anyone who's served like active military, you think like, okay, especially Marines, like they're the toughest people around. So you think like, how did someone go from a Marine to teaching kids karate, right? So Shawn, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
So I know you served in the U.S. Marines. So tell us a little bit about like where you served and like your active duty.
Definitely. So I actually enlisted a little bit older. So I enlisted when I was about 20 years old. And so
usually people do 18.
Usually they do 18, right? Recruiters do a real good job of trying
a little older, 20.
20.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, I was like one of the oldest kids in my platoon. There was like a 32-year-old, and then that was pretty much it. Everybody else was 18 years old.
What was the 32-year-old doing there?
Honestly, I don't know, but the dude was a beast. He actually won the Ironman award for our entire graduating class. Dude ran like a 300 PFT. He ran like a 50.
What's that mean? I don't know.
So a 300 PFT, it's a 3-mile run, sit-ups, and pull-ups. So you have to do 20 pull-ups, you have to do 100 sit-ups, and you have to do a 3-mile run in at least 18 minutes. And he would run it in like 16 minutes at 32 years old.
Oh my God, what a monster.
Yeah, dude was a beast. So I was one of the older gentlemen in there. And so it was really funny because when I got out of boot camp, I was 21, like pretty much as soon as we got to our first school. And everybody would come to me, hey, Shawn. Or Nichols, buy me beer. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to buy you beer. I'm not going to get NJP'd and get busted down. Like, go away. All right. Some of my friends over here.
Yeah. Yeah, but the people I really like, I'll get you some beers. Yeah. So where did you serve exactly?
So I was stationed out in San Diego. Beautiful. Loved it out there. I spent some time up in 29 Palms. If you've ever heard of 29 Palms, it is like the armpit of the military. It's the middle of the desert, out nowhere. The closest thing is an Applebee's. It's 45 minutes away from base. Palm Springs is like an hour and a half away. We did training for Marine units that were shipping over to Iraq. So what we did was I actually got to grow out my beard. I got to wear what they would like call the man dress, right? So like the traditional Iraqi garbs, and we would just live out in the village. And then they would come in and we would try to smuggle ammunition, smuggle guns through their checkpoints. We would.
So you were like testing them?
Oh, testing them, 100%.
Did you ever get any through?
So every unit went through. So what the test is where did you go when you went to Iraq? And the funny story was the best unit that we ever had come through was a reservist unit. And the reservist unit was full of nothing but police officers. So they were coming through, and I remember like this one time we got busted. We were doing a smuggling run, and like one of what they called coyotes, it was like the instructor trainers, they wore like the orange vest, and they're like, all right, you got to run from him. And so the guy starts running through the middle of the desert, right?
And your job is to chase this dude.
No, our job is to pretend like we're the bad guys. Their job is to chase them.
So you're getting manhunted?
Getting manhunted, yes.
Okay,
sir.
and does this guy have a weapon? He's like,
full on garb. So he's wearing full battle garb. So he's got the SAPI plates in, he's got the chest protector on. He's got his fully loaded M16, all 6 round. Like he's probably got about 80 pounds worth of gear on.
What's his job? His job to touch you? Or?
Well, his job is to chase you, detain you, do a search and seizure, make sure all the standard operating procedures are going through. And the funny part was this guy is wearing 80 pounds worth of gear. He runs down one of our guys who's just wearing literally like sneakers and jeans with like this man dress on. And he just chases him down and we're just like, all right, okay, well, that wasn't supposed to happen. So good job on catching him.
Cool. So when you did all these tests in the military or, in the Marines, like what were some things that I guess you didn't expect in the Marines?
So I didn't expect as much politics, honestly, as was in the Marines. So I remember the day that I decided to get out, I had a sergeant. He was talking to me, and we had this one guy. He probably 6'3". He was another sergeant, about 190 pounds, just beanpole looking guy, right? And in the Marine Corps, I was considered fat. So I was 190 pounds. I was 5'9", and like the way they do it is they do neck measurements and waist measurements, and that gives you your body fat percentage, which is not the way you judge body fat percentage at all. And so I got in the conversation with the sergeant, and he was like, "You're fat, Nichols." And I'm like, "I weigh 190 pounds. I spend 3 hours every single day in the gym. Like I can bench press like 275, like for like 4 or 5 reps. Like I'm not fat." And he's like, "Yeah, you are." I was like, "I just have a bad metabolism and I drink a lot." Like at that time, I was drinking like a fifth of Jack Daniels every day.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, I was drinking a
Was
lot.
that a standard for a Marine? I mean, maybe not standard for Marines, but I'm assuming drinking in the military is like more common because what else are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Like, there's no
drinking in the military.
Applebee's at 45 minutes away. Like,
Yeah. Oh, and not just that. Like the cheapest alcohol is literally on base. Like you go out into the real world, the civilian world. This was like 2008. Fifth of Jack Daniels was $35. On base, it's $20. So of course you're gonna drink. That's the cheapest thing to do. That's the cheapest entertainment. And we were having this discussion, and I was talking to the sergeant. The sergeant's like, "Well, you need to exercise more." I was like, "I already exercise enough. I run like 15, 20 miles a week." And he's like, "Well, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "I just have a bad metabolism." And later in life, I learned like more about how to control my metabolism, especially through like healthy eating, and like martial arts helps me. But I look over the other sergeant. I'm like, "Look at that guy. Like he's 7 foot tall and he eats junk all day. He comes in with McDonald's. He goes and he gets one of those green monsters that's like 400 calories in a single can. He goes out to like Applebee's for lunch. He comes back with Burger King like and halfway through the snack, and he's super skinny. So you're telling me that guy can eat whatever he wants, but metabolism has nothing to do with how much weight I lose or gain?" He's like, "Yeah, you just need to exercise more." And like that minute I was out. I was like, "I'm done. Like that makes entirely no sense to me. How are you in charge of me when you don't like understand basic human physiology?" So that was kind of like when I decided I was
that
like,
was after 5 years.
that was about 3.5 years in.
Okay. And I know you were, before we got on here, you were telling me a little bit about like the area you served, like between North Korea or something. Tell
So
me about
we
that.
did. So there's MUs called Marine Expenditure Units, and so what they do is they send you out to Okinawa. So it's when I got to spend a little bit of time in Japan. Okinawa is a beautiful part of Japan. If you ever had a chance to go.
I'd love to, yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's where
Our
I got.
martial arts roots, right? So I'd love to.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I wish I would have been into martial arts like back then, because like there was people always like practicing like out on the beach, out on the shore. Like there was people that were just practicing in dojangs. You would just see them like walking down the street, like, "Oh look, there's a dojo," and
Cool.
it was pretty cool. And so that MU was called Cobra Gold.
What's
If
a
any of you
MU?
guys-
Say that.
Marine Expenditure Unit. So it's just kind of where they attach a Marine unit to a Navy vessel.
Okay.
So we're on the MU, and we're going up and down the coast of South Korea and
So you're
North
on a
Korea.
boat.
We're on a boat. We're
Okay,
on a ship.
got it. You got to
And-
dumb it down for me a little bit. So we're
Sorry.
on a boat.
So an LHD, to be precise. And what an LHD is, just think of like an aircraft carrier, but smaller and only meant for Harriers and helicopters. And if you don't know what a Harrier is, it's just a jet that can go up and down
Okay.
without it goes vertical takeoff.
Okay.
Right. So we're up and down the east, I believe the west coast of North Korea and South Korea, and we're doing Cobra Gold, where we bring South Korean rock Marines on the ship, and we run like amphibious landings on the shore. And it's really just, if North Korea ever decides to fuck around, they'll find out, right? And that's really what it's about. And so the funny part is, if you spend 35 straight days at sea without a port call, you get 2 beers, right? And like
Two beers.
you get 2 beers, right? And the hustling that goes on for the tickets for these 2 beers, because they don't just give you 2 beers, they give you 2 tickets.
Right.
And so like they're like, yo, I'll give you $20 for that ticket. And then this guy over here, no, I'll give you $25 for this ticket. So there's one dude that spends like $500. He gets like 8 beers.
Yeah.
Right. And now he's completely trashed because you're on a boat. There's no alcohol. You have no tolerance.
Yeah.
And then they get in trouble because they do something stupid, like fall down the stairs and crack their head open.
Yeah.
So now they have to go up to medical. And it was, it was insane. So it was definitely a different experience.
So you're preparing the South Koreans. If that North Korea invaded, they would know what to do, or at least be aware of it.
Well, not just that they would know what to do, that we would be able to work in tandem with the South Koreans to help protect South Korea, right? So like this boat, like heaven forbid anything, if shit kicks off, right? Like, hey, we're launching Harriers, we're launching helicopters straight from here, we're going straight in, right? We have this, like South Korea has our support. It's not just like we're bringing them and training them. It's like, oh, well, here we go. So And then that's the thing, like if you ever see like North Korea when they start shooting off missiles, that's one of the reasons why, because usually like either they're doing Cobra Gold in that area, or Japan and South Korea are working on maneuvers together, or like any of those like South Pacific
And that pisses off
countries.
the North
And
Koreans.
that
So
makes them mad.
they'll do a missile
Yep, and they'll
launch.
shoot a missile and be like, haha, look at we might have a nuke, who knows?
Huh.
So
Really crazy. Were you? It's gonna be probably a funny question from a normal question for a civilian, but for you, it's gonna be funny. Like, were you scared?
I mean, not really. Like at that time, like, and that's the other reason why they go for like 18, 19-year-olds. Like I was always itching for a fight. I was like, yeah, let's go. Somebody attack. Come on. Like I'm so tired
You
of being
want
on this
action.
boat. Like I want to do something, because like you're just sitting on a boat. Like you don't get to do anything, right? You're like, what they do is they call like ship hours. So 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. you have to scrub down the entire boat from like top to bottom to make sure it doesn't rust and doesn't corrode. So like 7 days a week. Oh, it's a 7 days a week job. So like 7 days a week, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. You're literally just wiping down the exact same spot to make sure it's not dirty.
You're really training for your martial arts career.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
like,
wax
like-
on, wax off, right? Master Miyagi up in there.
Oh, that's amazing. So after your military, well, actually, before we even get to that, what benefits do you think you got out of it, like in your military experience? I mean, I'm sure there's some things you didn't like. We talked about some of the politics, but like
Yeah.
there had to be some things that were great, right?
Oh man, I love the brotherhood, right? So like they call it the biggest fraternity in the world, and so like anytime like you see a Marine, like you know that they went through the same trash that you did. So one of the things is when you join the Army, you're immediately called a soldier. When you join the Air Force, you're called an airman. When you join the Navy, you're called a sailor, and whatever they call the Space Force now, I don't know what they call those guys.
Space
But
cadets.
Space cadets. There you
I
go.
don't know if that's true.
Space cakes. Let's just go with that one.
Space
But when you join the Marine Corps, you are a cadet until you get through boot camp, and you have to survive the crucible. It's like 54 hours, 48 miles. When I went through, we did it in the middle of February, so it's winter in like South Carolina, and like everything's frozen. We actually had like drill instructors drop from hypothermia, right? So like the people that are supposed to be leading us were like go through like the water evolutions, and then we get hypothermia, and they had to
What's
go.
a water?
So one
What
of
did
the
you
things
call
is
it? Revolution?
evolution.
Water evolution.
So like it's a water evolution. So it's just certain things are certain things. So like if you're going,
Okay.
if you're in like a Humvee, like a water evolution for a Humvee is, you have to do like rollout procedures, right? So if you're in a Humvee and the Humvee turns over and flips in water, you need to be able to get out. So they call it a water evolution.
Okay.
Right. If you're in a helicopter, same thing. They call it a water evolution.
Okay.
For boot camp, the water evolution is that's when you're crawling under like the barbed wire, and it's in a mud pit and it's completely soaking wet, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and like 25 degrees out, and you're in these soaking wet clothes, and you've got your M16, and like they're full of blanks, and you're just running around yelling like a crazy person. They try their best to simulate a combat environment. So they have like smoke machines blowing, and they have like they do like fake mortars. They have big old speakers that are like doing like gunfire. So after this 54 hours, you end with a 10-mile hump, and a hump is just a hike, right? So it's a forced march, probably about. Think about like old people walking through the mall, right? A little bit faster than that. And you do that for like 10 miles
Are you
straight.
carrying a lot of stuff?
Oh, yeah. So you're carrying your entire loadout. So I think at that time, like just for recruit training, I think it was like 40 to 60 pounds, right? And so I remember this very distinctly. There was a gentleman in front of me who was falling out, and he started like falling back. And have you ever been in traffic and where like the car in front of you stops? And like you stop and you stop and you stop, and then the car in front of you goes, and it's kind of like this like slinky effect.
Yeah.
And if you're marching and not everybody's marching at the same pace, what happens is the first person's fine, right? They're marching at like 2 miles an hour. But once it starts yin-yanging, at the very end, if you're in the back of the platoon, by the time it gets there, in order for the whole platoon to catch up and be in rank and file, you have to run. So you're sprinting with like a 40-pound pack, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. So the dude starts like falling back. I just put my hand on him and then just walk forward, and I push him for like the next 10 miles. Like I'm not doing this. I can't run. This is 40 pounds. Like I'm just gonna push you for the next.
Metabolism's bad. I can't run.
I
Keep
can't
pushing.
run. I'm out. All right. So I'm pushing him for a very long time.
Wow. So besides like the brotherhood, is there anything else that like when you look back on it, you look like really fond on, or when you look back on it, do you think, man, I'm so happy I did that?
I was not a super confident kid, right? So I'll tell stories about my mom, but just it had me believe that I could do anything, right? So I still remember, please forgive me, parents out there. One of the reasons why I joined the Marine Corps was, I was doing the recreational drugs that like all teenagers do.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there and I was watching a commercial and I was with my friend and we had just gotten done and I'm just like, oh, that's the Lava Monster Marine Corps commercial. I can do that. And he looks at me and goes, no, you can't. I was like, no, I'm going to be a Marine. He's like, no, you can't. Very next day I signed up. And so once I got through it, I'm just like, oh, I can do anything.
And your mom or like she was cool with that? Like your family was like, oh yeah, okay, go to the Marines.
Oh, so I moved out when I was 18. So I had lived in 11 different cities in 8 different states before the age of 18.
Holy crap.
Right. Yeah. So
Why was your family so transitory?
it was my single mom.
Okay.
So as a single mom, never met my real dad. She likes to tell the story about how he gave her a choice of, hey, either you abort the baby or you lose me. And she likes to say, like, I showed him the door.
Yeah.
So she obviously chose me. And so we were just moving from family member to family member, house to house. And when I got to Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania was the first time that I felt like I had a home. So when one more time we moved, my dad got a contract to work down in Texas, in Sherman, Texas, as a janitor. He managed like 3 malls. So we moved down there. And I was like, you know what? I was like, Felicia and I had been dating for Miss Felicia. If you guys don't know, she's been with Action Karate for like 97 years. Or sorry, since 1997.
97 years is fine.
So we had been dating for a while. And I was like, you know what? I want to go back to Pennsylvania. I want to graduate high school with her. So I did my first half of my senior semester in Sherman, Texas. And then I did my second half of my senior semester in Bensalem. So that's where I graduated. So I came back, lived with her, emancipated myself. The weirdest thing I've ever done in my entire life was check myself out of high school and then check myself back into high school. I think that was like the most surreal experience. Like,
This is check yourself back in. Is this after the Marines?
no, this is when I was
Before
18.
Marines. Oh, this is
right?
when you, okay.
Yeah. So I would say 2004, December 2003, I checked myself out. So I'm like a self-emancipated at 18.
Okay.
And then came back to Bensalem from Texas and then re-enrolled myself back into high school. So I de-enrolled myself from one school, re-enrolled myself.
Why was that weird?
Well, most people, most people probably feel like, oh, I just can't wait to get out of high school. Like
Yeah.
I just want to be done with high school. And especially for my family, with my brother now, I'm only the 4th person to graduate high school. I'm only the 2nd person to graduate university. So my family, while they're full of love for some people, they're not the most successful, driven people. So like just the fact that I graduated high school was like a big deal.
Yeah.
And so like for me, like I could have just done what the rest of my family did. Just drop out of high school, right? Just settle down,
Did
get
any
a
of them
job.
do military training? Or you were like the first one?
No. So I was the first one not to get busted down in the military.
Okay.
So my uncle was in the Marine Corps, or is in the Army, I believe. He got kicked out. My grandpa retired from the Air Force, and it was back before the Air Force. It was the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
He retired from them, but he retired as like an E5 because anytime he would get promoted, he would get like busted back down. Like he would just get busted back down a rank, busted back down a rank. And so I think I was the first one not to get NJP'd, not to get busted down, do 5 years and get out and like with an honorable record. So I think I was the first one.
All right. That's great. And then, so you had this whole military experience in the Marines and learned a lot, obviously connected with a lot of your brothers, you're connected with for life. And then somehow you went from like the most badass version of the military to running a karate school where like 80% of the clients are like 12 and under, right? So how did that happen?
So actually, between the Marine Corps and karate, I got a degree from Drexel University in mechanical engineering.
Cool.
So, like I said, I was only the second one in my family to do that. And I like doing mechanical engineering. So when I would design something like, do you know what CAD is?
No.
It's like a computer representation of a model, right? Okay. So you develop like all the pieces. It's like a 3D rendering on computer. So like screws, nuts, bolts, machinery, cutting, like everything you can do. You can build like an entire car in this 3D model, right? So that's what CAD is. Um, I think it's called computer assisted design. So like it was really cool to design things in there, and then to see something that you created on a computer get machined, get welded, get created, get built, and sent out for product was really cool. The problem was is the in between time from like the first time I would get a project to completion, like just sitting behind a desk was never what I wanted to do ever. And so like when I heard about becoming a mechanical engineer, I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'm gonna build airplanes, right? Was not what it ended up being, and I just realized like that wasn't my calling, right? So as much as my family was proud of me for going to college, getting a degree, as much as everybody was like, oh, you're a mechanical engineer, that's amazing. For me, it wasn't like I didn't feel satisfied. Like I wasn't fulfilled every time I was like, yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. People were like, that's amazing, and I'd be like, is it though?
So
And
it wasn't what you expected.
not what I expected, right? Super proud that I did it. Very challenging, right? One of the other things that kind of built up my confidence, but I was done with it. So it was, I want to say 2017, right around, I think my son Kai was just born. We sat down with your brother and Miss Jackie and we're like, hey, look, like 5, 10 year plan. Miss Felicia and I are thinking about opening up a karate school. We just want to kind of know, like, hey, like feelers, like what's doing it.
Yeah, and to give some background for people who are listening, so this is Felicia and you were married at this time.
Yes, we've been married
So
since we were 21.
yeah, so married for a really long time. Felicia has been in our martial arts organization forever.
Yes.
And then you were dating her, and I remember like you coming up and in conversation and be like, "Oh, he was a Marine," and I'm like, "Oh God, he's gonna come see our karate program." And he's like, "What the hell is this?" And I'm gonna be really embarrassed because like this is like a Marine, like the toughest tough people, and like somehow like you wanted to get involved in it, and I was just like, does he know that like we don't kill people?" So, you know, obviously you're married to someone who's involved professionally, and she was running a school at the time,
Yes.
right? So when you talk to our team about 5 to 10 year plan, why 5 10 years? Like what was the idea behind that?
So, I think it all started with your brother. So I know on the last podcast he was talking about how he doesn't like find people. He just sets the lifestyle and hopes people shows up. And he started that from day one. So like one day I came home from leave from the Marine Corps and he lets me teach how to do an armbar, right? Like I've never taught karate before. I've never done anything before, but the faith and the belief that he has in people, he was like, "Yeah, you're going to go do this." And I was like, okay, so here I am wearing like my Marine Corps uniform, and that I think that was like the first seed that I could do it, and that like not just that, but like he believed in me, right? Because he had no reason to like let some crazy Marine come in and teach karate class. Like now that I'm a head instructor and I own a school, like letting some random dude just come in and teach a karate class, like I don't think I could ever do that. So like just the faith that he has in people, and that's kind of where it all started. And the reason why it was 5 to 10 years, to get back to your question, was because I literally had just spent 5 years going to school for engineering, right? Even though like I used the GI Bill. Vocational rehab, if you don't know what that is, like I'm a disabled veteran, so you get like an extra year of training. But even with mechanical engineering, it's a 5 year program instead of like the average 4. So I still had to take out student loans. So I was still in debt. So I was like, well, 5 years, right? 5 years will give me plenty of time to, pay off my student debt, kind of see if I really want to do engineering, really want to do this karate thing. And that's what we're going to do. Fast forward 3 months. 4 months. So we are in May. We're in April of 2018. I have a 5 month old son, and I get a phone call from your brother. Hey, Mr. Nichols, you know how you wanted to start a karate school in like 5 or 10 years? One of the guys that's running North Wales is leaving, and we need a head instructor there. And I was like, okay. He's like, I need an answer in 24 hours. And I was like, and being the master negotiator that I am, I'm like, give me 48 hours. So, and you know how pushy your brother can be. Not pushy, I would say pulley, right? He likes to pull you. He likes to pull you to where he wants to be.
Sure, yeah.
So he goes, all right, fine, 48 hours. And so I'm talking to Felicia. I was like, well, we have this kid. The school is failing that I'm going to be going to, so I'm going to be taking over. We need to like make sure that my salary is matched, and this is like the faith that your brother has in people. If he matches my salary, I'm gonna leave engineering and pretty much just leave the degree I just spent 5 years training for, and all the hours and hours I would spend yelling and like throwing textbooks across the room, like, this is too hard, I can't do it. And she would be like, shut up, go back study, right?
And
All of
debt.
that.
Right, you're gonna say
And in
debt.
debt. And I'm in debt, right? Oh, we were in massive amounts of debt. We were at least $100,000 in debt from credit cards, from student loans, from cars, right?
So why didn't the GI Bill cover most of that or most of your
So,
education?
so the way the GI Bill works is for the post 9/11 GI Bill, it will cover your tuition up to the highest cost in the state. Luckily, Drexel University, it's an amazing university. They do a thing called a Yellow Ribbon program. They will cover the other half.
Oh, okay.
They will only give you $1,000 for textbooks. I think it's a year. I think it was a year.
Okay.
So anything over $1,000, I had to pay for. And if you've ever seen an engineering book, they're like this big, and one engineering book's like $300. So
Okay,
like,
well, let's say you had to get 10 textbooks. That's only $3,000.
yeah. So that would go on the credit card.
Okay.
So over the 5 years,
Okay,
that all
got it.
piled
It
up.
just piled on the
It
credit
just piled
card.
up on the credit card. And so that, and then vocational rehab, the way that works is they'll pay for all of your books. They'll pay for all of your tuition. But you have to pass, and you have to be a disabled veteran, right? So the last year, or like, sorry, the last 2 years, only half of that was covered. So the very last year I had to take out student loans to cover tuition. And if you don't know the post 9/11 GI Bill, they also pay housing, right? So I had to take out student loans to also cover my housing at the time too.
You said they paid for it.
They paid for all your schooling. They don't pay for your housing anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
post 9/11 is different. They don't pay for your
Yes.
housing.
No, post 9/11 pays for your housing. Vocational rehab does not.
Ah, okay. So you had to pay for your housing in the end.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then so you're in all this debt. You have this education. You have the Marine backgrounds, and they're like, okay. My brother's like, I'm gonna pull you in, and you have 48 hours. What was going through your mind at the time?
Oh man, everything. Am I gonna disappoint my family? Am I gonna disappoint myself for like wasting this mechanical engineering degree? Which now I completely disagree with, like wasting it. Like you can't waste a college education. Am I gonna be letting down my son? Is it gonna be the right decision? What happens if I'm not good at this? Right? Because like the most I'd ever taught was like a white through red belt class, and I would help out at Felicia's school for adult class. Like that's the most I'd ever done. So now I'm going from helping out occasionally to running a full-time school
Yeah.
with like 3-year-olds all the way up to like 60-year-olds. Like, how am I going to do this? And not just that, I wasn't even a black belt yet, so
Yeah.
I was in the process of testing for my black belt. So like here it is, finishing school, 5-month-old son, testing for my black belt. So like I'm trying to teach myself all these katas, and he asked me this question. I'm like, all right, 48 hours, and Felicia, like, one of the things she's really amazing at letting me do is I kind of just jump with both feet in. Like when I make my decision, I just do it, right? Like I'm just like, all right, I'm joining the Marine Corps, I go. I'm going to go get my degree in mechanical engineering. I'm going to do it. Oh, I'm going to go open a school. I'm going to go start being a karate instructor. I'm going to do it. Oh, we're going to go buy and operate our first school. Let's go do it. So like whenever I say I'm going to do something, Miss Felicia's amazing. She's just like, all right, let's go do it.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Wait, but there's no part of you, and this is the part I don't understand. You're a badass Marine, okay? Or at least from the outside, that's what I consider you, right? Anyone who goes to Marine training is like a savage, right? So, was there any part of you that's like, I don't want to do this wimpy karate crap? Like,
I had actually gotten over that a long time ago. So when I was in the Marines, I'll just go ahead and say it. I was a huge tool bag,
Okay.
right? So I did a little bit of MMA. I trained at a gym where Frankie Edgar, one of the guys from the UFC reality show, one of the gyms that he trained at, I trained out there for about a year, post like deployments and stuff like that. So I had always wanted to do it. So when I came back, I was like, and your brother let me teach. I was like, yeah, I'm going to teach these little karate wimps like some real martial arts. And I was just like, and then like just over time, I was like, oh no, like every martial art is different, right? Like I don't care if you have a degree or if you have a first degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, somebody pulls a knife on you or a sword on you and they're a black belt in how to operate a sword and how to operate a knife, you're on the lower end, right? Yeah. If you get stuck on the ground game and you are a Taekwondo 6th Dan, right? You're on the ground with a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? Like it doesn't matter what martial art you do. Does your self-defense work? Does your martial arts work? And can you actually defend yourself, right? Because there's just so many times where people are like, oh, I'm going to do this in a real life fight, or I'm going to do this. And like those like YouTube videos like, oh, poke the person in the eye that's choking you behind. And like, I'm not really sure that would work, but if it works for you, you can try it.
Yeah, right.
So my time over time, I had adopted out of that mindset that it was wimpy karate, and not just that. It was like, oh, well, also I'll be the instructor, so I won't let them be wimpy.
Mm,
I'll just drive them into the
yeah.
ground until they all cry and want to quit.
It's funny that like, that was my perception. Like this is how he feels about it, but you did not have the perception at all.
Not
Like
by
you
the
just
time, by the time I was going for my black belt, I had lost that perception. But
mm,
when I was like 21, oh yeah, that's the
you would have
perception I
thought
had.
that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, MMA is the best thing ever, and it's the only martial art that you could ever do. And if you don't know MMA, you're not a real martial artist.
Yeah.
That's how I was when I was like
Yeah.
21.
And it's also that saying, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Right. So everyone has a plan of how they're going to defend themselves in a certain situation, right? Like, oh, I know jujitsu or I know taekwondo or karate or whatever. I know our niche training, but like until you get punched in the face, you don't really know,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's why it's so important for people to have the opportunity when they can to do any kind of live sparring
definitely.
or at least simulated situations. Like, listen, the average person never gonna get into a fight. I've been in maybe two fights in my entire life. Each one of those were like with friends and probably too much alcohol, right? Nothing like crazy. And what I always feel like is the biggest benefit to any martial art training is the confidence of knowing that you can defend yourself if you need to, which prevents it from ever happening. Like the
Exactly.
best wars, the war never fought. Like was Sao Tzu? What's that author's name? The Art of War.
Oh, Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu,
Yeah.
yeah, like the best war is the one never fought, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, and like for me, like I always feel like okay, because I'm aware of my surroundings when I walk in the street or I go out with friends or I'm just like anywhere, and because I have like this air of confidence, martial arts gave me that, so I never really have to do it. And like if I got into a giant fight, like do I think I'd be able to defend myself pretty well? I think so, right? But like let's say you get punched in the face and you're actually in a hectic situation, you don't really know,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And it's just like one of the things like Felicia makes fun of me for is whenever we go to a restaurant, she doesn't really make fun of me. She just knows that's what's going to happen is whenever we go to a restaurant, I always sit with my front facing like the entrance,
Yeah.
right? And like whenever I'm out, like,
You mean the exit, or I
or
guess
the entrance,
exit.
wherever people are coming in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you want to be able to see what's happening.
I want to be able to see what's happening. And whenever we're like out, we're on the street, like I totally try to avoid like having my face buried in my phone. I still do the trick that I used to do in high school. I put headphones in, but I don't actually play music or anything.
Mm.
So like people like think that I'm not paying attention, but I'm totally like listening to everything that's going on around me.
Well, I enjoy those things when it's like eavesdropping on someone's conversation, right? They think, I think this person can hear me. So I wasn't thinking about it in terms of self-defense. I was in terms of like just having fun eavesdropping.
I do that sometimes, especially when when I was going to Drexel and I was taking the train in every day. Just turning off the headphones and listening to some of the crazy conversations and like the fights that would be happening. Insane.
Mm. So when you open up the school in North Wales, I know at the time the owner left and you kind of took over. And like, where was it at the time, like financially?
It was declining. So all the numbers and everything were fugazi, right? So when I got there, the active count, what they said it was like 190, 195.
Yeah.
By the time we actually got the real numbers, I think it was like 150. By the time I stopped offending people, I think it was like 135, 120. So
Wow.
I think we were talking about this at the beginning when I first started, right? So I come from an office building. I'm a Marine, right? I've never worked with kids. I've been a server, but like normally it's just what can you do? Like what's your order? And then I walk away. So now I'm actually like having to interact with people. And Felicia had a sign and the other instructors had a sign of days without offending people.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a little zero because every day I would say something that would be offensive to somebody, right? I would say something like, oh, like stop being a baby, or oh, toughen up, or oh, you're from Jersey and Jersey sucks. And they would immediately quit.
Yeah.
And like, so it took me a good 3 or 4 months to like just stop saying ridiculously offensive things.
Yeah. I think that some of that is like your military background. Like you say whatever you want. Like there's nothing you can't really say with the boys, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's nothing you can't say as long as you're saying it on even keel, right? So
Yeah.
if you're saying it to your peers or you're saying it to somebody that's a lower rank than you, you can't say whatever you want to the people above you.
Okay.
They get kind of upset about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you actually had a sign. It was like, when was the last time he offended someone? Kind
Yes.
of like a factory would have like, well, last time someone got hurt.
Yep.
Right,
Days without
right,
incident.
Days without
Yes.
incident. Okay, it's so funny. And like honestly, that's like it's funny that I mean, it's unfortunate that you offended people and they left. And
Yes.
obviously that was a learning curve for you that you eventually figure out. But that's also, I think, one of the best parts about you and like your character is like you don't mind telling people exactly how you feel. Right. And I can tell them how. So I think in some situations it get you in trouble.
Yes.
But in some situations it's like it's like, okay, this person's actually telling me how they feel. They're not holding it in or finding out about it later, or they tell someone else and you find about it through the grapevine. It's like, I'm gonna tell you exactly how I feel right now.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's definitely a good way, a good in between. And I think the people who do it the best, like people who I've had on here like Michael McCreary, is like, hey, do I have permission to be like open and honest with you and have an open, honest conversation, and then tell him that, as opposed to being like, Jersey sucks, you're a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
And I same thing. I learned that from Mr. McCreary, right? Like asking, and actually I learned that from you, right? Like asking for permission. Like, hey, look, I'm going to talk to you, right? It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm doing it because it's coming from a place of love. And now here's my bluntness.
Yeah.
So it's like the prepping. It's like the chef prepping the food before he starts hammering it. Like, all right, there's going to be some bluntness coming on. There's going to be some honesty coming on.
Yeah.
I love you very much. And I was reading, I forget what the name of the paper was, but the 19 words to say to somebody before you give them a correction.
Yeah.
I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations of you and I know you can live up to them. Right? So I've kind of adopted that strategy now moving forward. It's just like, hey, I'm going to tell you something. It's not going to be the best, but let's move forward from it.
And I think anytime you say something like that or like ask for permission and they open it up and give you the permission, I think it's always like scary. Like a lot of times you want to avoid those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know times where, we have a teenage instructor who smells like crap, right? They don't put on deodorant. I don't know what they do, right? Or a parent who comes in reeking like pot or alcohol, right? And it's like, okay, now my school smells like crap. And because this parent is... and I also like, did they drive here? Like, I think they drove here with their kid. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like or maybe an instructor who keeps on showing up late, or someone who's being just lazy in class all the time, right?
Yep.
The real tough one is a kid who's lazy, and that you have to, and it could be other issues, right? It could be ADD, ADHD, or a million other things, but you have to tell the parent like, hey, like, don't let him quit, and they just want to let him quit, or she, because they don't feel like dealing with the fight anymore. I'm bringing them to martial arts class. It's easier for them to just be like, forget that, right? Like, I don't need to deal with that. Like, he doesn't like it. I don't want to bring him, right?
Yeah. That is honestly, I think that's the most, the biggest struggle. Because like where I come from, right, I was always like, my mom always tried her best, right? I still remember like when I was like 6 years old doing my very first karate class and doing it for like 4 weeks. And then at the end of the 4 weeks, never going back to it again, right? And now I know it's because we didn't have the money, right? Because I grew up lower middle class or very poor, like on food stamps and CHIP, the children healthcare program. My mom would like go do surveys at a grocery store to get like free food and like free cereal. And then what they would do is they would have like bag A and bag B, and I would have to eat 2 bowls of cereal, and I would have to compare them, right? Oh, did this one get soggy? Blah, 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 right? So like,
I will sign up for any survey where I get to eat lots of different cereals. So let me know how to sign up for this. I'm into it.
It was in the Chamonix Mall. So I grew up like that. So I grew up like, I know where those people are coming from. And my mom kind of was just like, it was always survivor mode, right? So the story that she would tell me when I was a kid was, we're survivors. We'll survive anything, right? And it wasn't until I got older that like, yeah, survivors, congratulations. Like you survive, like anybody that can survive this world and be happy and have a smile on their face, I commend you. But there's a difference between just surviving and thriving. And I didn't learn that until I joined the organization, like honestly, until I was in 35, right? So like the first 35 years of my life, it was just survival mode. So I understand where these people come from. And when I tell parents like, hey, if you don't do this, right, like your kid, he's not going to be a failure. I'm not going to say that he's going to like end up selling drugs or like, dancing on a stripper pole or anything like that. But you're making their life more difficult. They're not going to learn these lessons at 9, 10, and 11-year-olds that they should learn now until they're 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. And
the consequences are greater when you're older.
Exactly.
Right?
And in that 10 years, like what could they do for those 10 years of investment that'll pay off for them later on in life,
Mm.
right? Like every time I see a kid, and like I'm a firm believer in this, like you do whatever you want to do, right? Like if you want to work at McDonald's for the rest of your life, you want to flip burgers, I'm not going to judge you on that, right? Just know you're probably going to have to live in an apartment with somebody else. You're probably going to have to drive your starter teenage girl beat up car, right? You're not going to have that lifestyle that you see on MTV or on TikTok or anything like that. If you want to be a Fortune 500 CEO, good for you, right? Like realize you're probably gonna have to sacrifice time with your family, things like that at some point in your life, right? Just know what you're getting into before that. So when I talk to my kids and I talk to my students, that's what I talk to them about. Like, do whatever you want to do. If it makes you happy, do it. Just realize what that's going to give you. What do you want from life, right? Do you want to drive a nice car? Do you want a nice house? You're not gonna be able to do that working at McDonald's, bud, right? Do you want to be a professional athlete? You're not going to do that if you're skipping classes here, right? If you can't come to karate class, you're not going to go to football practice for 12 hours a day. It's just not going to happen, right? And I wish I could tell those parents like those things like, "Oh, I'm going to let them quit. They'll figure it out when they get older." Like, what do you mean they're going to figure it out when they get older? Like I didn't figure it out until I was like 35, and I would just financially, if I would have had better better financials from my parents, like where would I be at now?
Financial guidance, yeah.
Yeah, like where would I be at now? Like maybe I would own 5 or 6 schools instead of owning 2 schools. Like who knows where I'd be? So I wish I could just like sometimes just shake the parents and be like, look, like keep them in karate. Like I promise you, you will not regret them getting your black belt, but you could very well regret them quitting tomorrow or the next week or the next month.
Yeah, and you totally set a pattern of behavior anytime you let someone quit, right?
Yeah.
And it also becomes part of your identity. So part of my like personal identity is like fitness and martial arts and eating healthy. That's just like who I am. Does that mean that like I don't eat healthies all the time? Sometimes? No, of course I eat burgers and pizzas like ice cream like anyone else, right? And does that mean I don't skip a workout every once in a while or miss martial arts class? Yeah, of course. But it's like so core of who I am, because I did it as a kid, and because that was things that were important to my family, especially my older siblings. My parents didn't know anything about healthy eating. I mean, I grew up eating ravioli from a can, hot dogs in the microwave, and tuna fish. It's literally and frozen Elio's pizza. If it was like a real good night, we get some of that. And but I'd learn from my sisters, here's like a healthy food, right? Or here's a home cooked food from my friends' parents. I'm like, oh, this is what like real food tastes like. Like, oh, this is like a fresh piece of broccoli, right? And I think you need to have those mentors in your life. And if you don't have those mentors, I was very fortunate to have older siblings, like that. Also, like my brother, and even like a lot of my older siblings, like my sisters, would teach me about like traveling and like friendships. And I would just see them screw up massively and be like, oh crap, I don't want to do that, right? And that's why like martial arts is so just essential, I think, for kids, because you're getting a positive, you're getting a positive role model, right? You're getting someone who cares about kids and fitness and education, or, even adults, right? But you're getting someone who's going to positively impact your child and say the right things and be kind and supportive. Doesn't mean they're always going to be nice or say things that you want to hear, but they have your best intentions at heart, which is like, I know if you stick with this and go through some really tough times, just like you go through tough times and your Marine training, that you're going to be stronger because of it. And kids need that now more than ever.
Oh yeah, especially however you guys feel, whoever's listening to this on COVID, whatever happened with that lockdown, right? It affected the kids, and I've seen it 100%, right? Like whether you're pro lockdown, anti lockdown, who cares? What did happen is the kids are affected, and I've seen so many kids come in post lockdown. They don't know how to look you in the eyes. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know how to interact with other children. They have anxiety from just being out in the real world.
Yeah, this like weird anxiety that like wasn't a thing before with like a 7-year-old, and now is. It's like, oh, they're scared. Like they're just scared of everything. And in the beginning, they were scared of like getting sick, which I don't think is much happening anymore. Maybe a little bit for some people. But in the beginning, it was like that was like, I would hate to see that as like a kid. Like,
every once in a while, we still get a family that's come in that like this is the first thing they've done since the lockdown, and like their kid's like 4 years old, right? So the kids had no outside experience, and just like seeing that, like even my own son, right? Like when we locked down, Action Karate was amazing for our students, where we closed down on a Friday. We were teaching Zoom classes on Monday.
Yeah.
With my son, he was 2 years old. The whole reason why we got him potty trained in the first place was because he wanted to go on the karate mat. So now he goes from
That's the
working.
only reason to get involved in potty training. All
Yeah,
right, he's got to go on the karate mat, so we got to potty train him.
well, no, that's what he wanted.
That's what
No,
he wanted.
he's like, when can I take class? When can I take class? I was like, well, Kai, when you poopy in the potty, you can take karate class. A month later, he was pooping in the potty.
Amazing.
Like literally like 2 years old. Like now he's on the mat, and then boom, shutdown happens, and now he's not on the mat anymore. And the only time that he sees karate interacting is like Felicia and I from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, just either teaching classes, doing videos, writing curriculum, calling leads, doing retention-based things. And so for him, he went from spending all of his time in a karate studio on the karate mat to now just watching mommy and daddy teaching karate to other people where he doesn't really get to interact with other people. So we make fun of it now. His love language is tackling, right? The only other kids that he ever saw during the pandemic were 9, 10, 11-year-old kids that were close friends of ours. And they were all on the karate mat, and they would all just tackle each other, right? So now he goes to school, and oh, there's my friend Danny, and he just bowls over these other kids that have been, relatively secluded, and he's just like, hi, and just knocks them over.
So going back to where we were at the school. So you took over. It was like 120 something kids, and I know that you guys have had like tremendous growth. And just to give some credibility, so over the last, let's say, 6 months or whatever, what would you feel like your average gross is, or like your high even is fine?
The highest that we've grossed in the last 6 months was 86,000. I think that was like back in May. This whole year, our average gross is 72K.
Amazing.
So we went from having like 120 students. Sadly, I was in the room when this happened. The enrollment director that was at the school when I got there, she got double blastoma or double myeloma cancer. So she had to get like cement injected into her hips, Miss Siobhan.
Yeah.
Right, and I was
Everyone
there.
loves Miss Siobhan.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
She knows like everybody in North Wales. And so when she got sick, like Miss Felicia worked at Parkwood and I worked in North Wales, and they were going to give me Miss Mary, who is a lovely, lovely woman and fantastic. She was a fantastic enrollment director. But I was like, well, just give me Felicia.
Yeah, you want your wife there.
Just give me Felicia, and I promise you, we'll run the school, and the school will get. At the time, the goal was 35K. So in order for us to, the school to be profitable, Mr. B was like, well, I'm making up your salary from engineering. In order for this to happen, I need you to make 35K. So we got to 35K, I think within like 7 months of that. And then now, like I said, this year we've averaged probably 70, I think it's 72K a month. My goal for the last quarter was 75K a month. So hopefully October is going to be a good month, and we'll get there, and I'll reach my goal. My goal this year, though, was to be the first school in Action Karate to gross 100,000 in a month. Haven't been there yet, so
yeah, we'll get there. There's no doubt in my mind you'll get there.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had such explosive growth the past year. Like, you're just going to grow on top of that.
Yes.
Right? And I think a lot of that has to do with your passion and obviously Felicia's experience and keeping you in check. I think that's very important. Otherwise, everyone will quit because you say crazy shit all the time.
Don't tell her that.
No, she knows that.
She does.
So I guess for anyone that's like listening and maybe they had military experience and they just love being around other people, love like the character development side of martial arts as well, and they wouldn't get involved in martial arts, but maybe they don't have the opportunity or don't know how to do it, or they just think that like they can't do it because like you literally never taught a day in your life until like someone was like, hey, why don't you teach us armbar? Like, you're a Marine, you could do it. Like, what advice would you give them?
Believe in yourself, right? So one of the things we talk about all the time is you are here for a reason. All your past accomplishments got you to where you are in life, right? So you're here. You can do it. If you are worried about, I don't want to change who I am as a person, because that was one of my initial things of I don't want to change as I am as a person to work with other people or to sell myself to other people. Don't change for them, change for yourself, right? So like by doing this, I've changed so much in the last 5 years. the last 20 years where I did like wrestling and Marine Corps martial arts, I've increased so much just in my own martial arts, personal growth. Believe it or not, my leadership skills in the last 5 years are way more than what I've ever thought would be possible. And way more than even what the Marine Corps taught me, right? Like they had to listen to me when I was in the Marine Corps. Like anybody that was below me, like you have to listen to me because I'm a corporal, listen to me. These people don't have to listen to you. So now it's a whole new wave of leadership. And if you really want to challenge, if you really want to see like, oh, can I generate the next generation of leaders? Can I really make my stamp on the world? Definitely do that. Believe in yourself and change the world.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today. And if there's someone listening that wants to reach out to you, how do they find you?
Shawn Nichols on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, I believe, Mr. Nichols. Other than that, I like phone calls. I'm not a big texter, right? I'm old
All right,
school.
don't give out your number on
I'm not
here.
giving out my phone number.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Shawn Nichols, Shawn,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And Nichols, Nichols. Thank you guys for listening. And if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to get involved in martial arts professionally, you can reach out to me, Matthew Brenner, or send me an email, matthew@wdojo.com. Or if you want to be able to explode your school and go to 30, 50, 70K months, and you want to learn how to do it organically through schools, daycares, and businesses. I call that the Triangle Codex. It's a big part of what we do to be able to recruit new members. You can reach out to me on Instagram at blackbeltbrenner1 or visit wdojo.com. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.